So what if I told you that the AI tools you use every single day, from the assistant in your spreadsheets to your car's navigation, pretty much all trace their roots back to one single, kind of chaotic week in March of 2026? Well, that's what we're breaking down today. Those 7 days that took AI from being this fascinating idea to, well, an inescapable reality. Let's get into it. Look, some weeks we get small updates, right? A new feature here, a tiny model there. But the week of March 16th, 2026, that was different. This felt like a real shift, like a phase change from a technology that was promising to one that was just everywhere. This wasn't just another step forward, this was the tipping point.
And here's why. In just 1 week, the industry dropped more than a dozen major new AI models. This wasn't a trickle, it was a full-on technological tidal wave. And it covered everything: language, video, even 3D reasoning. The sheer density of it all was just staggering.
Okay, so let's dive into our first section here, an unprecedented week. This is where we're going to see how the floodgates really opened. And AI went from being this cool side project for the tech world to a core part of our entire economy.
The biggest thing that changed this week was just the sheer speed. All of a sudden, the time it took for a wild idea in a research paper to become a tool you could actually use, it collapsed from months, maybe years, down to days. To put it in perspective, more powerful AI tools came out this 1 week than in entire quarters just a couple of years before. It was insane.
All right, so let's actually meet the models themselves and see what made this new generation of tools so special. We're going to look at the headliners that really led the charge and get a feel for the key trends they were setting.
What's so fascinating here is just how different they all were. You had OpenAI's GPT-5.4, this absolute behemoth designed for really complex business problems. I'm talking analyzing a decade's worth of financial reports in minutes. Then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you had Alibaba's Qian 3.5, which was all about being incredibly efficient and cheap. And then you had something else entirely, Lightric's LTX 2.3, which let anyone create professional-looking 4K video with audio just from a simple text prompt. 3 totally different problems, 3 massive leaps forward.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's nail down one key idea here, the context window. Just think of it like the AI's short-term memory. The bigger the window, the more information it can juggle at once. And GPT 5.4's ability to handle about 1 million tokens, that's the equivalent of a huge report or an entire company's codebase, was a complete game changer for serious professional work.
And this perfectly captures the 2 big trends that were happening at the exact same time. On one side, you have this push for frontier scale. Just make the models bigger, more powerful, able to handle massive amounts of data like GPT 5.4. And on the other, you have radical efficiency, making models smaller, faster, and hyper-efficient, like Qian 3.5, to get amazing power for way less cost. Both paths are incredibly important for where AI goes next.
Now, of course, all this new power didn't stay locked up in labs for very long. Let's take a look at how it immediately started popping up in our daily lives and, started to remix the world around us.
This quote from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang just nails the vibe of March 2026. The focus completely shifted from AI as this thing that lives on a screen to what he calls physical AI, systems that can actually perceive, reason, and act in the real world. And we saw this happen almost instantly. Suddenly, Hyundai's warehouse robots could understand complex voice commands in a super noisy factory. Over at MIT, researchers were using AI to literally shave years off the time it takes to design new cancer treatments. And for the rest of us, it was right there. Microsoft's Copilot Health started making sense of our smartwatch data, while assistants from OpenAI and Adobe just became a natural part of Excel and Photoshop. So the big picture here is this. AI stopped being a separate website you had to go to, or an app you had to open. It was becoming the invisible, powerful engine running inside the software and the devices that we were already using every day.
But a change this big obviously doesn't happen in a vacuum. This week sent a shockwave through the economy and our whole society, really, forcing us to ask some brand new questions about money, about power, and even about reality itself.
First, let's talk about the money. By this point, OpenAI alone had raised around $110 billion. Just let that number sink in. This massive flood of cash just shows you how high the stakes were and the kind of resources being poured into this stuff.
And all that investment was definitely showing up in adoption. The use of AI in professional services nearly doubled in just 1 year. But here's the catch. A report from Thomson Reuters found that while 40% of firms were using AI, only a tiny fraction, just 18%, were actually tracking if it was making them any money.
Everyone was jumping in, but not everyone had a plan.
And this created some real tension in the market. This Reuters analysis puts it perfectly. Investors saw AI as this huge growth engine, but they were also worried that the insane spending on new data centers and all the energy they need could actually fire up inflation again, becoming the pin that could burst the whole economic bubble.
So you could see the market start to, well, grow up a little. The first phase of just broad AI is amazing hype was kind of over. Investors started getting way more selective, trying to pick the real winners while trying to get their heads around the fact that AI was creating massive wealth and introducing brand new systemic risks all at the same time.
And the risks weren't just financial. This wave of incredibly powerful generative tools forced this huge society-wide question on us. When reality itself can be generated on a whim, what do we actually trust? The rise of hyper-realistic deepfakes suddenly became this very real, very urgent problem.
So the race was on to secure reality, and experts landed on this three-part plan. First, watermarking, embedding invisible signals into AI content so you know where it came from. Second, detection, building new AIs that are designed to spot the fakes. And third, regulation, trying to establish some legal ground rules for disclosure and accountability. So after that whirlwind week, where did that leave us? In our final section, let's pull all these threads together and really look at what it means to be living in the AI future that March 2026 kicked off. Just as the dust was starting to settle, a Morgan Stanley report landed, basically warning everyone that this was just the beginning. They predicted another, even bigger breakthrough was coming soon, and they cautioned that most businesses and regulators were still seriously underestimating the sheer speed of all this change. And this is really the new normal that was established. That 1 week showed us that AI had become three things all at once. It became the new infrastructure, right? The basic utility like electricity, powering everything. It became the new default setting in the software we all live in. And it became the new frontline in our biggest, most urgent policy debates.
And that kind of leaves us with the final thought. The incredible, mind-blowing tools from that 1 week, they're standard now. The breakthroughs of yesterday are just today's normal. So as this pace keeps getting faster and faster, the real question isn't about the technology anymore. It's about us. Are you ready for what comes next? Thanks for watching The Explainer.